So, but because it's linear, I'm thinking of slope as you just thought about it. So you just, let's use 10 minus 6 over 2 minus 1, and I'll get a slope of 4. Now, you have a slope of 4, and you can easily get the equation. It's actually, the easiest thing to do is to get the equation. Just to be sure, it's not the fastest, but it's the easiest. So I'll just put this as 4x plus b, and then substitute this with 6 and this one with 1 to get the value of b, which means b will be equals to 2. So now I can write the actual function as y equals 4x plus 2. If they need me to find this one, then it's 4 times 10 plus 2, so it's 42. So 42 is the correct answer.
Okay, Mr. Why can't I do it like x over y and then like why is it wrong?
You mean 10 minus like how do you mean y over x? I don't understand. Which numbers بالظبط over y?
So Mr. I did 5 over 22.
Where did you get 5? That's x over y.
Yeah, and then equals to 10 over x.
Okay, because it's not a direct variation. It's a linear function.
Okay.
There's a difference. It's not just that they're multiplied by the same factor. We add something, which is the y-intercept at the beginning. So it doesn't come to fit the right way. It comes close, but it's not 100% there. The one you're saying, I can do that if the original equation was y equals 4x. That's it. That would be called the direct variation. Which actually brings me to the point of discussing direct and inverse variation, by the way. So I want you best to know that the direct variation, whenever we say that the directly variated or directly proportional, the form should be written in this way: y equals kx. These are direct variations. While the inverse variation, which means when one increases, the other one decreases, the form of it is y equals k over x. So there's always a constant that's either multiplied by the variable or the variable, the constant is divided by the variable. If we're talking على direct variation, this means لما x بتزيد y بتزيد، لما y بتزيد x بتزيد. But inverse is when one of them increases, the other one decreases actually. So that means if I was given already y and x بتوع بعض, let's say something like this, and then you're asked what would be the y if x was equals to 4, in this case, you can use the x and the y, the given ones, to find the k first. And remember that to find the k, we just need to move x to the other side. So you just have to do y over x. So that's why it's 10 over 2. So that means I found already the k as 5. Since I have the k, I can say that the equation is now y equals 5x, and I'll substitute whatever value of x that I need to find y, or substitute y to find x if that's the case. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Right. Same thing برضه في inverse variation, but if it's inverse, then to find y, to find k, I'll have to multiply x and y. That's the difference. طيب, what else?
I got this one correct. And then the line ones I got wrong.
You don't like geometry, I think.
I do, because I don't know that I kind of forgot this because I did it at the beginning of
the parallel lines thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you a few things about the parallel lines generally, and hopefully this will help you remember بس. And this one is one of the easiest lessons, don't worry. So in any two parallel lines, this line that actually cuts them both is called a transversal. So it cuts both lines, creating the exact same angles, which means these angles, the four up here, which are, let's say, 1, 2, 3, and 4, are exactly repeated over here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, the exact same ones, because these two are parallel to each other, line L and M. So that gives you the indications that all acute angles, all angles that are small, acute less than 90, are equal to each other. 1, 3, and 1 and 3, those are all equal to each other, not just because of the parallel lines, it's also because of the vertically opposite angles. Whenever there are angles in front of each other, that happens. Same thing happens, but for the obtuse. So all the obtuse angles are equal to each other. Any obtuse plus any acute is supposed to be equals to 180. So let's actually name them and give them better شوية symbols. The acute ones will give them A. So this is A, this is A, this is A, and this is A, just because they're parallel. Now, if this is B as well because of vertically opposite, while because of the parallel, if this is B, this is B, and if this is B, this is B as well. Any A plus B, any acute plus any obtuse is equals to 180. They here told you that the measure of angle 1, which is this one, is twice the measure of angle 2. That means that if this is, if 2 is x, this one would be 2x. And I know that 1 is obtuse and 2 is acute. So that means that both together added to each other are supposed to be equals to 180. That gives me x equals to 60. So I know the value of the smaller angle. If they want the measure of 1, then I have to multiply that by 2. So it's 60 times 2, which is 120. So the answer here is B. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I kind of just guessed my way to it.
Which is very smart, by the way. Very smart.
But I think I got it. Yeah, I got it wrong.
Okay. بس it's smart to think about it يعني برضه even if you're unable to. أنا أصلا عندي مشكلة كبيرة دلوقتي مع الستودنتس عامة وبالذات أنا يعني most of my classes are groups. I don't have ones in the secretary. فإن هما they have this problem of not thinking out of the box. Like خلاص they don't know it. خلاص I don't know it. هعمل إيه يعني ربنا عايز كده هعمل إيه. So بقعد أتحايل عليهم إنه لا يعني you still have to still kind of think out of the box, especially لما ما تكونش عارف الرول ولما ما تكونش عارف ايه الموضوع ده ومش فاهم حاجه في السؤال. Anyway. طيب let's get to the other one. ايه تاني؟
Yes, for question 4. What I did was, so 8n times 4 squared equals to 2 power of 10. So I did 2 power of 3 and then times n times 2 power of 2 times 2, you know? Perfect. And then I just found out the value of n.
You were able to just look at it and get it, صح?
Yeah.
Or you can just write it as an equation, يعني, which is the 3n minus 6 equals 10, which are the powers of the new bases. So the most important thing to take note of, and whenever we have the variable in the power, we have to make all bases equals to each other. So if it's 8, 2, and 4, we have to make them all 2, just like the smallest one actually to the power of something. 2 power something, not times. Perfect. Number 5.
Can I ask you why it's
actually not 6, it's 4. Because 4 is 2 to the power of 2 times 2, and then this one is 2 to the power of 3 times 1. Yeah, I got it wrong. And it's added just because they're multiplied, so I can add the powers. So actually, they should be added to each other, and then move the 4 to the other side, so 3n should be equals to 14. That's not right. 2, 3, and...
Mister, I think it's 3n equals to 6.
اه ايه ده؟ ماشي sorry yes. You're 100%. انت مؤدبة قوي بجد I think وكده. That's
Okay,
very cute. Thank you. It's not you think, that's 100% sure. المهم let's go for number 5. Is this one wrong? And I want you to just get this concept of one concept about the absolute value is that whatever the result is, it's always either 0 or positive. Okay? So it can never get me a negative answer. What we usually do is we remain stuck in thinking about what's inside the absolute itself. While it really doesn't matter what's inside the absolute. What matters is that the final result is just positive and that's all. So that's what they're trying to trick you about over here. They're saying for what value of n would this be less than 0, which means when would this whole thing gives me something that's negative. So if this thing will always be positive no matter what, or it's zero, how is it that I'm going to add 1 to a positive number or add 1 to a zero and it would come out as a zero? It's impossible. So there's no such value of n. You get the concept of it now?
Okay. Yeah,
so let me, before we move, I have another question on the same topic. So let's get this one. Actually, wait. This one. Which of the following expressions is equals to 0 for some value of x? Same concept. So just think about كده. What do you think?
So, Mr. If I choose A and I can put x as -10, like what?
Even if x is equals to -10, -10 plus 5 would come out as absolute -5, which means it would come out as 5. So don't think of the details. Think of this thing will always become positive or 0, whatever what's inside it. So is it possible to add something to 0 or positive and it would result to a 0?
No.
So the 5 added to whatever an absolute value, whatever the absolute value is, would never be equals to 0. Same thing here, 5 plus any absolute value is not equals to 0. -5 though plus an absolute value, that may be equals to 0 because this could be equals to 5. So -5 plus 5 may be equals to 0. This one, -5 minus something that's positive, will become negative. So -5 minus 3, for example, is -8. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
So again, I'm not actually considering at all what's inside the absolute. I'm just thinking about the whole thing كده all together. Whatever it is, it's always positive. So think about whatever happens outside of it. Is it possible to add something to that positive or subtract something to turn to become 0 and so on? There's another one برضه. Let me quickly كده grab it. No, I think it was in the book itself. Yeah, this one. This whole actually page. Let me get it out. Look at one. Let's try this one out.
Mister, is it B?
True.
No?
True, 100% true.
Oh, true.
Because if this is positive minus something, that could give me a negative value, but positive plus anything would never be a negative value. Think of number 3. This is now an equation, okay? Give me 1 second, I have to pick up this much. Is alhamdulillah. USB المشكلة إن أنا مش يعني فوق مش العربية. حاضر بص لك على ماشي. Sorry. What do you think? This one is an equation actually. It needs to be solved. So it needs to go like this. Equals 1. Now, the negative 1 will have to go to the other side by addition normally, just like any equation. That becomes 2. Now, how do I solve an equation with an absolute value? We do not ever change what's inside. We change what's outside. We solve it once as if it's still positive, and another time as if it's actually negative. So only the outer number gets to be changed, but what's inside never changes, okay? That would get me x equals to 3, and then here x is equals to negative 2 plus 1, which is negative 1. So which of the following is there? It's the negative 1, definitely. Now there's another way, though, that we can solve all, or not all, some absolute value equations. Whenever x has a coefficient of 1, we can still use the method that I'm about to explain. But if it has any coefficient other than 1, then it won't work. This method would get you to understand, Shoya, why do we even need the absolute, okay? So let's say we have something like this, x minus 2 equals to 4. We call this number here, inside here, is the midpoint. We call it midpoint. But it's always with the opposite sign. So we switch its sign. And this number out here, we call it the distance. So we graph a number line, and we understand that we'll have 2 answers no matter what, because whenever x is an absolute, it will give me 2 answers. So the 2, the positive 2, is actually the midpoint between both answers. It's like 2 plus 4, which is 8, and 2 minus 4, which is negative 2. Does that make sense? So the answers are negative 2 and 8. So why is this important? It's important to express distances. Like I want to know the numbers that are far away from 2 by a distance of 4, but I don't care if they're far away to the positive side or to the negative side. I just want to know like what are the further away numbers from 2. So mainly the main focus of the whole thing is the midpoint. Like you compare something to a midpoint. How is this برضه beneficial in a real life application, for example? So if there's a specific game that allows people to go in between only the heights of 120 centimeters and 160 centimeters, and they'd like to express this in an absolute inequality form. Think of those as the answers already. So I know the limitations, I know the answers of the absolute. How can I get back to the equation? I need a midpoint and I need a distance. So in order to get the midpoint, I just have to add them up, divide them by 2, and that would be 140. So I know that the midpoint is 140. And I also know that the midpoint should be put with the opposite sign, so it's minus 140. then the distance is the distance between the 140 and the 160, or the 140 and the 120, which is a distance of 20. So I'll put a 20 here. Now I need the people to go in who are between the lengths of 120 and 160, but not more than that. So I need the difference between whomever the person is, his height, and the 140 to not exceed the 120. I need the difference between my height, the one going to the game, and the 140, which is the midpoint, to not exceed the 20. Because if it did exceed the 20, it will go above the 160. If the difference between my age and the 140 is lower even, like if I'm 100 centimeters only, then in that case I'm below the actual height. So I'm still not allowed. In another case, if I'd like people to be more than 160, or less than 120 only to be allowed, I need those people and those people only. In this case, I'd say it's x minus 140 as well, but I need it to be bigger than or equals to 20. I need the distance to exceed the 20 distance over here. I need it to be bigger. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So that's the whole thing. That's everything regarding absolute. If you're thinking, not one thing though, the graph of them. The graph of absolute equations is like a V. So and we actually discussed this at the very beginning when we were discussing the shapes of graphs. It looks like this. Now this can be moved. It could go up, right, down, and so on. So for example, this shape here is an absolute value that's flipped, which means it's reflected across the x-axis, and it has moved up as well. So they're asking me what value of x is the value of f of x at its maximum. Where's the maximum f of x?
It's at, yeah, this.
So what's the x value? For what x value? That's what they're asking. 1. So the answer is just 1. That's a simple one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Check this one out. This is an equation, but it can't be solved using the geometric way, which is the number line. So try it out without the number line.
Okay. Mister, I got x is equals to 2 and 4 over 3. No.
No. Is it possible that an absolute would be equals to a negative number?
No.
So it's impossible for the 3x minus 5 in an absolute to be equals to negative 1.
Yeah.
The number outside of the equal must always be positive. If it's negative, then that would never work. Does that make sense? I know it's a tricky stupid.
The one we solved down, it was positive.
Exactly. It was equals to 1. Now check, for example, number 2, it would work normally because it's equals to 5. That would just work. I like tricky questions. If not in the test though. يعني واحنا بنهزر كده اوكي.
Yeah. So it's -6.
صح. So mainly that's it. This could be the harder one, but try it out برضو.
Mister, I have a question.
Sure.
So can I distribute the minus?
No, but you can move it to the other side by division.
Okay. And Mister, the 3, like, should I minus it the other side?
You have to. We can't solve it unless the absolute is completely alone on one side. So I have to move the 3 first and then the negative, which means it will become, as it's 3 when it's moved, it will become a 0. So -0 doesn't make any sense. It's just a 0. So that means that the only option for n is to be equals to 3. Right?
Yeah.
Sure?
Yeah, I got it.
ماشي. عشان كده بقى بحب نحل امتحانات. ايه تاني؟ كده 6 بقى صح؟
Yes.
دي اوكي طبعا صح؟
I think yeah. 1 minute, I'll check.
You got it right, but I want to confirm if it's easy.
Oh yeah. If I got it right, then yeah.
Okay. This one also you got it right. It's about number of boys, number of girls, and so on. Are you sure this one was easy to do though?
So, Mister, what I did is that I did the girls is greater than or equals to 7, and then boys less than or equals to 15.
Okay.
And then I added 7 and 15 just.
Oh. So you just did an inequality for them, صح?
Yeah.
خلاص لا, this is easy صح. ماشي. Number 8 you did it right. اللي هي average. Did we discuss the average? Did we explain the average?
No, but I checked on Google how to solve the theory.
اوكي طيب انا معلش برضو I would like please to cover the average كلها. ممكن دلوقتي ولا ايه؟ ولا في question معين عايزه اقوله لك قبلها مثلا؟
No, عادي, it's fine.
طيب let me change the name of this one بس عشان بجد مضايقاني. And then this one will be statistics. So mainly there are measures. Okay, let's start from the very beginning. What is statistics? Okay, so statistics is mainly a study of numbers. When does that happen? It happens when would we need statistics? So it happens when we start, like if we want to know something about the entire population of the UAE, for example, we wouldn't be able to actually go and ask every single person in the UAE. Instead, we would take a sample of those people and we're going to ask them questions and gather those answers. What we just did when we take a sample, there are specific procedures in order to take a sample. The sample must have specific conditions. That's the first step to take a sample. The second step is to actually ask people questions. If we do ask them questions and collect the data, this is called a survey. But if we did something to them and we checked what happens, that's an experiment. Okay? If we just decided that we got out with a decision that 50% of the people in UAE likes whatsoever, this is a census or a theory. Okay? So that's what we think, believe, without any calculations. That's just the census. Okay? So what's important about taking a sample? First of all, the sample must be a good representative of the population. How can it be a good representative of population? If, first of all, the number of the the sample itself, or the amount of the sample itself compared to the population, it must be a good, decent number. So if the population is 1 million, you can go and take a sample of 1,000. Okay. Yeah. But don't go for 1 million and take a sample of 100 people and tell me this is okay, this is enough. So if the sample is a few number of people compared to the population, that's not a good sample, which invalidates the entire statistics then. Okay, so everything that you're doing khalas is not valid anymore. Or the second thing is that it must be a random sample. And by random I mean it's unbiased. It's important to get to know the word. It can't be biased. If it's biased, then it's still an unfair sample. So if you want to ask people whether they want to open a dog park or a playground for kids, don't go and ask all dog owners. It doesn't make sense, because that is one of the questions that was there. So they went and asked all dog owners, what's the problem with that situation? It's that these are not good representatives of the population. Oh, okay. Sorry. Other than that, what's else important about the sample? It needs to be unbiased. It needs to be the number. It needs nothing else for the time being. Now, regarding the survey by itself, you can go and ask those people, ask questions, and you're going to ask to gather the data. Sorry, and the data would maybe be things like numbers. So if you want to ask them about their heights, they may be just random numbers. Or if you want to ask them about their siblings, how many siblings do you have? So one will give you 3 and one will give you 2. So when you gather things, it's like just numbers, 3, 2, and then 2 again, for example, and 0, 4, 3. There is a way to display those data. There are lots of ways to display the data. We can display those by something called a frequency table, especially if we have numbers that are repeated more than once. We use a frequency table. We can use a histogram. We can use a circle graph. It depends on the data. We care a lot about the frequency table more than anything else, because most of the questions in the tests come about the frequency tables. But to be honest, all others are important. Now, okay, let's say we already gathered the numbers. What do we do next in order to understand more details about those people? So we do 2 types of measures. There are 2 measures of statistics. One called center, measures of center, and the other one is called measures of variability. And actually, the words make sense. Yeah, the names make sense, because I want to measure how centered are the numbers. What does that mean? So if we're talking about lots of numbers, just like the number of siblings, for example, so the data would come out as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. We want to know if those numbers are centered, are close to each other. Or in other cases, for example, if I asked about the number of the amount of money they have in their bank accounts, you'll find people with debt, negatives, and you'll find people with billions, and you'll find people with. So these are 2 numbers that are distributed. There's a bigger range of numbers available, right? So in that case, the center is not. That's why the center is important to understand whether the numbers are all close to each other, or the numbers are too much far away or distributed. While the measures of variability tells me the changes of between the data itself. How much do they vary from each other? That's why it's called variability. Like, if I go and ask about the prices of houses in whatsoever locations, like for example, if I go and ask in Al Warqa, it's different than if I go and ask in Al Nahda, for example, right? But when I go ask people in Al Warqa, they're all of the houses there, they should be close to each other in ranges or in their amount. So if I told you that the average prices of the houses in Al Warqa is 2 million, would that be a decent indicator? Actually, no, because there could be a couple of houses that cost each 20 million, and then all the others cost 1 million, and because of that huge two houses, or the prices of that enormous two houses, it distorted the data and got you a weird average, right? So while most of the actual houses cost million, you thought they cost 3 to 4 million because of the two numbers, or the two values that are too high or too low. The values that are too high or too low, we call them outliers. So if there are values that doesn't really fit the rest, they're too high or too low from the rest, these are called outliers, and we don't like them because they distort, as I said, distort all the data that I've collected. Right. What are the measures of center? There are 3 measures of center: mean, mode, and median. And what are the measures of variability? 3 as well. They're the range, variance, and standard deviation. The mean could be also called the average, or it is actually called the average. It's called the arithmetic mean or the average. The mode is mainly the most repeated number, and that's important to know, because if I know that a specific price, for example, is repeated too many times, that is important to highlight. While the median is the middle number, but after ordering, ascendingly or descendingly. So it's the number in the middle, and it's also important to know, if I know that the prices, or the median of the prices, is 100,000, then I know, and I also need to know another few things in order to understand better. Like, I can't just know the median, it's not enough, or just know the mean, it's not enough. The 3 of them with each other, they give me a better understanding. Like, imagine if we added another 3, like the variability, it gives you more clear understanding of what's happening. So if I told you that the middle number is 100,000, that's okay. But what's the maximum? What's the smallest? Does that mean there are houses there that would cost 20,000, for example? How would you know if I told you the average? If I told you the average of the houses as well are 120,000, that's okay. That actually gives you an understanding. Since the median is 100, while the mean is 120, that means that the majority of the houses are actually bigger than 120 and 100. Why would the mean exceed the median? صح? Same thing if it's the other way around. If you figured out that the mean is lower than the median, what does that tell you? It tells you that most of the houses are lower than that price, not higher. What does the range though represent? The range represents the largest minus the smallest. So it tells you the range of numbers that you're working with, like from what to what. So if I told you that the range of the houses are 200,000, then you know that if you start, or the lowest price is 100, the highest will be just 300. It can't exceed the 300. That's the range. What's the variance? The variance gives you an understanding, as I said, how the numbers vary from each other, whether most of the numbers are far away from each other or not. What is the standard deviation? The word deviate is when you deviate from a path, means you go further, you inhiraf in Arabic. You go further away a bit. So standard deviation in Arabic means الانحراف المعياري. What does that برضو means? It means the perfect, or the normal deviation. Deviation from what? From the average. So the standard deviation gives you an understanding how far away the numbers are from the mean, not far away from each other. The variance is far away from each other, while the standard deviation gives you far away from the mean specifically. You need to understand those things rather than just know how to calculate them, because the questions is not how. There are, of course, questions on how to calculate every one of those, but the harder ones is how to compare them to each other. And what happens if we changed one of the values, for example? Would the mean be bigger? Would the mean get smaller? What would happen to the median? Would it change or would it stay the same? These are the things you need to understand more. And if you do understand what every one of those represent, what do they do in reality, you'll be able, it will be easier for you to understand how to compare them and so on. So let's discuss first the mean, mode, and median. So in order to calculate the mean, which is the average, we just have to do the sum of the data over the number. So imagine if we need to calculate the average of the money that I have and you have and 1/3 person have. So when we calculate the average, it's like we calculated or we gathered all the money that the three of us have and we distributed it equally among the three of us. So maybe I had 10 and you had 3,000 and the other guy had just 100. But when we get the average, the amount that everyone should have equally, if we were distributed equally, that's the average. Okay? So it matters a lot. It's one of the most commonly used statistics in the world. They tell you the average price of the cars is whatsoever, the average price of the average height of the average, and so on. So it's a very important statistics. Now, it's easy to get the sum of the data, just add them together and divide it by their numbers. The hard part is when you have something like a frequency table, like the one you just solved in your test. This is not a frequency table, yet it's something called a frequency graph. It shows you how many times each score was repeated. So when you look at it, it tells you that the score of 100 was repeated 6 times because 6 students got 100. So when you actually look at those data, they're written in the form of 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, 6 times, and then 80, 80, 80, 85 times, 43 times, and so on. But instead of writing them in this form, 20 numbers in that form, instead they wrote it in that form for you to understand. So if I'm thinking of finding the sum, which is adding them all together, I have to understand that the 100 is repeated 6 times, which means that the 100 should be multiplied by 6, or if I need to add them up, plus the 80 multiplied by its frequency, which is 5, plus the 70 multiplied by its frequency, which is 4, plus the 40 multiplied by 3, plus the 30 multiplied by 2. If I added all of those up, this is the sum of the data. Divided by how much? They're actually 20. They're 20 students. They're 20 pieces of entry, so they have to be divided by 20. That would get me the mean of the data. Okay? Is that clear? Easy?
Yeah.
Awesome. طيب, what if it's not written in this form? Instead, it's written in a form of a table, and you're not told how many students are there. You're just told that 100, 80, 70, 40, and 30. You're told 100 is 6, 80 is 5, 70 is 4, 40 is 3, and 20 is 2. You're told that this is frequency and this is the value. How can I get the n? How many terms are there? N means the number. Add the frequencies. Perfect. So if I added all of those, that must be 20, and that's how I get the n. So it's the sum. The symbol means sum, by the way, of the frequencies. Correct? Good. So how do I find the median, though? The median is the middle number. What's the median? As I said, it's the middle number. Oh, before we move to the median, sorry. What if in another question, the average is given? So in one question, or in another question, they tell you something like someone has, of the average of 5 tests that someone took was 80. And then there's something else. There's the remaining of the question. But I'm talking about whenever you find out that an average is there, what do? You have to take the average and multiply it by the number, because that would give you the sum, and that is always important. That will always help. So the questions would be something like this. Ahmad has an average score of 85% in 6 tests. What is the score that he needs to get in the 7th test in order for his average to become 90%? Let me repeat that thing. So right now I have an average of 85% in 6 tests. And then I want to get 95% in 7 tests, because I'll test the 7th one. So what's the score? What is the 7th score that I should get in order to get this 90%? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're given the average. So whenever you see an average and a number, without even reading the remaining of the question, take that average and multiply it by the number. That would give you the sum of the scores of all 6 tests. correct? So 85 multiplied by 6, that's 510. So this is the sum of the 6 tests. Now I want to get an average of 90. Here's another average given برضه. So I'll take the average, multiply it by their number, which is here 7. That would get me 630. That is the sum of the 7 tests. So what's the score of the 7th?
120.
Well, subtract them. Yes, exactly. So it's easy now to think of anything regarding the 7th one if which seems to be now impossible. يعني there could be a question that would ask you each test is out of 100 كمان في الأول قال لك كده, and then he'd ask you is it possible or not, or so if it's 120 it's impossible then for this guy to get a percentage of 90% now. Makes sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. This is the average part. Now regarding the median part. Shoot. Now the median, as I said, is the middle number. It's the number in the middle. But after ordering them. So if the numbers are written in front of me, like for example 2, 4, 7, 10, 20, 23, 6, no, 60, I can find the median by just crossing out. And then there are 2 numbers in the middle. So what should I do? I'll add them up together and then divide them by 2. That's how I get the midpoint between them. So that's actually 13.5. Yeah, 13.5. So the median right here is 13.5. Done. Easy, huh? Now look at this one. If it's an odd one, so let's say we have -3, 10, 210, 630, and 1000. In this case, when you cross one from the right and one from the left, one from the right, one from the left, there's only one number remaining in the middle. So that's your median. Easy. So we just noticed one thing. What if we have 200 numbers? Are we going to cross one from here and one from there? That doesn't make sense. So we have to look for a faster way to do this. What we do is that we divide the number of terms by 2. Always, every single time. And that could come up as one of 2 cases. If the n is even, that would be a case where the median is between 2 numbers, just like here. If there's 6 terms, then the median would be somewhere in the middle, between 2 numbers. But if their number is an odd number, if there are 5 terms, then it will just come up as it is right away. It's the one in the middle. So if you divide an even number by 2, the answer will come out as an integer, as a number. So if that happens, take that integer plus the next one and then divide them by 2. But remember that this gives you the place of the median, but not its value. So you do not know the value of the median, you just know where it is. So for example, if there are 6 terms, just like here, 6 divided by 2 is 3. You take the 3rd plus the 4th number over 2. So you go to the data again and you check, here's 1st, 2nd, here's the 3rd, here's the 4th, add them and divide them by 2. Makes sense? Again, that gives you the place of the median. It's very important to remember that. On the other hand, if they're odd numbered, like 5, for example, divide by 2, that would give you 2.5. So whatever it is, when you divide it by 2, it will give you something 0.5 as long as it's an odd number. If that happens, just approximate it to the bigger one, and it's still the place of the median. So the 2.5 will be approximated to 3, the 3rd number. That's the median right away as it is without adding or doing anything. So when you look at it, here's 1st, 2nd, and that 3rd is right there. That's the median. In a question like this one, if I'm trying now to find the actual median of the scores of the students, I have to first figure out, let's say you're not told these are 20. I have to first figure out the n, the number of terms there. And how do I do that? By adding the frequencies. So I'll add 2 plus 4 plus 6 plus 5 plus 3, right? That should give me 20. So I'll take that 20 and divide it by 2. That would give me 10. So I'll take the 10th plus the 11th over 2. Now, where's the 10th score? What's the 10th score?
Is it the 6?
How? Remember, which are the scores? I'm talking about the scores, not the number of students. So the answer is a score.
Wait, so the 10th and the 11th.
Yep. What's the first score in the data that 30. I have? 30. What's the 30. Second score?
40.
No, 30 as well. Because the 30 is repeated twice. You get that?
Okay. Yeah.
So in order to understand what is it, you just have to check it's 2 plus the 3 of the 40, because we have to take them in the same order. So these are 5 terms now. The 5th term is a 40, by the way. The 6th term is a 70, and it's repeated for 4 times. So this was 5, 4. The 9th term is still a 70. The 10th term, though, is an 80. And the 11th, it's also an 80. So 80 plus 80 over 2. So the median here is just 80. That's the median score. Makes sense?
Yes.
Sure?
Yeah.
One, and then the mode. What do you think? Which of those is the mode? The mode is the most repeated number.
It's the score is 100.
Exactly. The score of 100, that's the median, because it's repeated 6 times. I can have 2 modes normally. Yeah, it's okay to have 2 modes. I can have 2 numbers repeated the same number of times, and then I'll have 2 modes. It's okay. Type. What else will happen? I want you to understand one last thing. What if we do have the scores of someone written right there, and then we have, and then they told you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are 6 tests. Let's say one of those data entries were entered incorrectly. No, let me change that. Let's say one of, he'll have to take a 7th test. Okay. We know that the 7th test will be out bigger than 90, and we know that for a fact he'll get a score bigger than 90. How would the mean and the median of both cases compare to each other? Like, I want to know. Let me change the question. If this is data set A, and now there's another data set B where it's exactly like A, but one more number will be added that's bigger than 90, but we don't know its value. It's just bigger than 90. What would happen, or how can we compare the mean, mode, and median of A and B?
Okay, so first we could try like solving for A. We can find the mode, median, and mode, median, and what?
Mean, mode, and median.
Mean, yeah. Mode, median, and mean. And then, for example, for B, maybe we can put a value that's greater than 90, like maybe 91, and check.
That's very smart. And that would just take me some time, but it's perfect. Manage, give me a second, and I have to send the next group, and I'll have to postpone them for 15 minutes ولا حاجة.
Yeah, so take it.
Okay. إن شاء الله يردوا مش عارف إيه. طيب. Sorry. What you're saying is 100% true, and it works just fine. بس I want you بقى to right away, like, not actually calculate it, but think about it, like what would happen, okay? Right now, the median of this data, because they're already well organized from ascending from smaller to bigger, I know right for a fact that the median is somewhere here. This is the median. It's actually definitely here. It's the number between 90 and 93, which would make it 91.5, right? Right.
Yeah.
If I added a number added 1 to the terms that's bigger than 90, or in other words, that's bigger than, no, it has to be bigger than 91. Right? I have to tell you it's bigger than 92, come on. Bigger than 92. If a number that's bigger than the median itself is added, the median will move to the next term, or will become bigger. Yani if I added مثلا 100 here, when you look at the new median right now, it's 1 here, 1 there, 1 here, 1 there, 1 here, 1 there. That's the median. So it moved 1 to the right. So if I added a term that's bigger than the median itself, it will move to the right. It will become bigger. But if I added a number that's smaller than the median will go to the other way. How? Check this one. If I added, let's say, 75 and then 80 and then 85, 90, 93, 93, 95, and 100. So, no, not the 100. One from here, one from there, one from here, one from there, one from here. It's now 90. It became smaller than the previous one. So if I added a number that's bigger than the median, it gets smaller if I added a number that. And what happens to the mean then? If I added a number that's lower than the mean gets smaller. If I added a number that's bigger than the mean, significantly, it gets bigger. So here's the trick about the mean. If I added, let's say, 93, if I added another score of 93, and I started calculating the average will get lower, not bigger. Because now the sum has increased by a tiny bit, while the number has increased by 1. So I'm now dividing by more people, and I've increased just a tiny bit. If, on the other hand, I increase the number that's way big, 100, the average will definitely become bigger. If I increase the number that's just a bit smaller, the average may not even be affected. In some cases, it may stay the same or get smaller. But if I added a number that's extremely small, it will definitely become smaller. Makes sense?
Yes.
Shit. Sorry.
Mister, if you have to start your other class now, you can.
لا خالص. I actually no. I got confused in لا معلش. Give me 1 second.
Mister, take your time.
I could have started today another one. Okay. I hate it. My schedule is becoming something I have to worry about. I never thought I'll have this problem of actually not fitting things, and it's getting really hard. I'm thinking of hiring someone to do this, but I always feel like no one would be as good as me in doing the parts that I'm trying to fix. Anyway, let's not waste more time. I want you to know I can stay with you as long as you want for today. That's a good thing, so we can stay, and I don't have the next class. Well, it's a good thing because honestly, I like the pace of what we're going through, and I don't want to cut it somewhere. Ask. Any questions, any problems, anything that you have a problem with?
No, Mr. Bliss, I just kind of have to
apply.
Do a couple more statistic things, yeah, so I can actually get the hang of it.
No, perfect. I get it. But as long as you now have the main idea, I'm pretty sure once we start applying, it will be easy. Let me come up with a couple of questions for you. حلو ده. ماشي. الحاجة الوحيدة اللي لسه ما عملتلهاش forms even though I know it's extremely important هي دي. ف يعني ايه؟ في ايه يا ابني؟ So طب لا give me a second. Okay. So check this. This one is not really statistics يعني detailed but it just starts with the basics of statistics which is just a survey. So check it out. And then I'll move down. Okay?
So Mr. 57.
Okay. Which is just adding them, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Here's the first one. An outlier is added to the dataset below. Which of the following pairs of statistics has no change in value as a result of the addition of the outlier? What will not change?
So Mr. The outlier is already added?
The outlier is already not added. It will be added.
Mister, is it the median and mode?
The median and the mode. Yes, true. Why back?
Because like the median would be the value in the middle.
Which
so
is
like it's 72 here. The average is 72. And for example, if another one, whether if like it's smaller than 60 or greater than 75 was added, then it will still be in the range of 72.
yes, because it will either move to this one, become 72, or to that one, which will become still 72. So the median will not change. هذه التريك والمود because the 73. And there are no other numbers that are repeated يعني that number of times أصلا. Perfect بجد حلو قوي. Check this one. Suppose the student's score's grade is determined solely by the student's score on 8 tests, which are worth 100 points each. If Bain has an average of exactly 88 points on the first 6 tests, how many points must the average on the last 2 tests to earn exactly a 90-point course grade? It's actually a good one.
So, Mister, I did so far 88 times 6.
Good.
And then should I do 90 times 2?
Yes, no, not times 2. Not times 2, because 90 is the average in which tests?
Yeah. On the grade, on the course, the whole thing.
The whole course. So how many subjects actually?
1.
No. He needs the 90 in the whole course. How many tests is he supposed to test in order to get?
8.
8, exactly.
Okay. Mister, I did something wrong because I don't know how to. So I did 88 times 6,
Okay.
then 90 times 8, and then I subtracted the values. I got 192.
Okay, 192 is the sum of how many tests?
2. Also, I divide by 2.
Exactly, because he needs to know the average of these 2 tests.
Yeah. So it's 96.
Perfect. So you did everything right. It's just that this was a trick, an intentional trick for you to. So it's fine. You did an amazing job. بجد ما شاء الله. طيب, let's try this one. Let me برضو write the steps in case you ever want to return to this. So it's like we did, as we said, the 88, sorry, multiplied by 6, and then we 90 multiplied by 8 minus 88 multiplied by 6, and whatever came out of this, we divided that by 2. So?
Yeah.
So it's 96, you said?
Yes.
Perfect. Now, no, see, this one is not even important. This one. So they said that this is a graph of 16 positive integers. Which of the following statements about the mean, median, and mode of the dataset is true? this is a frequency one, so you need to always read what's the x and y in order to understand which of them represents the frequency. Because in the graph, in the one that we actually explained of the students, the frequency was the one down. And it's not always called frequency. It could be called number of students, number of tests, number of whatsoever. So check this one. Tell me what you think. And in order to برضو get understand شوية what you need to look for, you have to read through كده some of the choices. Like A says the mode is less than the median, and the median is less than the mean. So apparently they're comparing between the mean, mode, and median, which means I have to find the three of them and compare them. Okay.
Listen, we add the frequencies together, صح?
To get what exactly?
To get the average.
To get the number in the average, or you mean the sum? Like the average is sum of a number, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking, if we add the frequencies, that will get me the sum or the number?
The number.
The number,
the
yes.
Number.
So how do I get the sum though?
I add them all together.
I multiply each term by its frequency and then add them on.
Okay. This is the mode 3.
Yes, because it's the most repeated one.
But Mr. is it على حسب the frequency or integer?
No, the frequency. The integer is just the data. يعني الانتجر 3 اللي هو الرقم 3. integer 3 يعني الرقم 3 is repeated, the frequency بتاعته 4 times. So the 3 is repeated 4 times, the 4 is repeated 3 times, the 5 is repeated 2 times, the 6 once, 7 once, 8 once.
And Mr. Last thing is the median 2.5?
No. 3.5.
Why?
Because there's 16 numbers, so 16 divided by 2 is 8. So we're talking about the 8th plus the 9th term over 2, correct? So here's the first, and then another 3, so the 4th, and then another 4, so the 8th is 3. The 9th will be 4. So the median is 3.5, exactly in the middle. Does that make sense or not so much?
Mr. Hornet, I'm just trying to figure out.
Because, okay, let me write this down in another way. The 1 is repeated once. The 2 is repeated 3 times. The 3 is repeated 4 times. So, and then the 4 3 times, 5 twice, and then 6, 7, and 8. Right?
Okay, but yeah.
So when you think about it, if 1 is repeated once, then this is the first term. 2 is repeated 3 times, so second, third, and fourth is 2. Fourth is 3, 6th, 7th, and 8th is 3, so the 9th is 4, so the median is somewhere here. Okay, what about the mean? The mean, you just have to multiply each one of those by its frequency. So plus 2 times 3, plus 3 times 4, plus 4 times 3, plus 5 times 2, plus 6, plus 7, plus 8, because they repeated each of them once, and all of this is divided by 16. When you do this on a calculator, I'm just not sure because I did it mentally. I think it's either 62 or 64 the sum. I'm not sure. Can you please just quickly do it? I'll try my best to do it.
Is it 16 or 10?
No, because there's 16 positive integers. If you actually add up the frequencies, they're 1 plus 3 plus 4, which is 8, plus 3, so 12, sorry, 11, plus 2, 13, plus 3, 16. So بس هو لا، ما هو عشان هو اولا هو قايلهم هنا، plus if you even calculated the frequencies they should become 16. فاهمة؟ يعني ال n الفريكونسي بتاعت 1 is 1 plus الفريكونسي بتاعت 2 is 3 plus الفريكونسي بتاعت 3 is 4 plus الفريكونسي بتاعت 4 is 3 plus 5 it's 2 plus the 6 which is 1 plus the 7 1 plus the 8 1. Once you add all of those, this is 16, so that's the number of terms.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But let me, I will best get the average. 1 plus 6 plus 12 plus 12 plus 10 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8. It's actually 62. 62 divided 16, it's 3.75. So the mean is bigger than the median, right? What about the mode? The mode is the smallest. So it's apparently mode, then median, then the mean, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, one bad quick trick for this, because this took too much time, right? You see this graph? If you connected all the bars, it will form a graph that looks somehow like this, huh? There are 3 cases. The graph originally should be exactly like a bell curve, exactly in the middle. The peak should be in the middle. While in 2 other cases, the peak could move to the left, or the peak could move to the right. This one. Okay. Now this one is called skewed to the right, actually, because skewed means pulled, so it's skewed to the right, so that's the pull. This one is skewed to the left. Now, if the graph is normally distributed, which means it looks like this. This is what we call a normal distribution. This is the perfect scenario of any case in the world. So if we're talking about the scores of a class, it should be exactly like this. Most of the students get in the middle scores, which is B's and upper C's. Very few should get A and very few should get F. But in reality, it doesn't always occur this way. So it either moves to the left or to the right, just like the other two graphs. In this graph over here, the peak moved to the left, which means it was skewed to the right. طيب, if it's in the middle, the mean, mode, and median are equal to each other. They're exactly the same if you calculate. But if it started moving to the left, think about it this way. So the mean, median are in the middle. If you pull them this way, the mode is the easier to pull, and then the median is harder, and the mean is the hardest. So once you start pulling it this way, they all move to become lower as well. But the mode shifts dramatically, the mean shifts a bit, and then the median shifts a bit more, and then the mean shifts just a tiny bit. So that's why when we move this graph to the left, you'll find that the mode is the highest point, and then the median is a bit bigger, and the mean is somewhere here. That's exactly what happened here. This was the mode, the median was here, 3.5, and the mean was 3.75. Does that make sense? So if that's the case, if it moved this way, the mode is less than the median, and it's less than the mean. But if it's moved to the other way around, bardo again, it's still the same type of movement. The mode is easiest to pull. Then the median is a bit harder, and then the mean is the hardest. So that means that the mean is actually, in this case, less than the median, less than the mean, the mode. The mode is the highest point because it's the highest peak. Makes sense, Shoaib?
Yeah.
Right. Of course, there are sometimes tricks. Tricks would apply imta, and when would you need to actually calculate each and every part and so on. When there are two peaks, يعني when two terms مثلا 3 و 4 الاثنين عاليين زي بعض. In this case, لا, there may be a trick here. Probably there will be a trick there. الميديان مثلا والمين هيطلعوا نفس الفاليو عشان هم قريبين من بعض. او المود هيطلع نفس واحد مثلا قد الميد، هيطلع في حاجه قد الثانيه. So as long as there's only one peak like this, you don't actually have to calculate each part. Just look at it and recognize that the mean must be the biggest, and then the median, and then the mode. Okay? These are all tricks. Now this is exactly similar to this idea here. It's a frequency as well. اللي عنده circles كتيرة فوق بعض يعني تكرر عدد الcircles. So مثلا هنا ال 8 متكررة مرتين، while هنا ال 8 متكررة مرة، و apparently 8 مثلا 0.5 متكررة مرة. When you look at this one, ال 6 هنا مرة، ال 6 مرتين. ال 5 هنا مرتين، ال 5 هنا مرة، while 4.5 5 مرات. Do you get the idea كده؟ So it's like, but you can look at it برضو as if they're graphs. يعني you can think about it as if it's something like this. And this one is something like this. And this one is something like this. Okay? So the peaks here are very weird, right? So we can't depend on just thinking about the mean mode median. Let's see what are they asking us to find. They're asking me about the standard deviation. Correctly compares the standard deviation of each of the three sections. Do you remember what's the standard deviation? Not so much.
So it was something we add and then divide by.
No. I didn't actually give you a rule for the deviation, ولا variance, ولا اديتك just a rule for the range, the biggest minus smallest. The variance for standard deviation, I told you it shows how the numbers are. The variance shows how the numbers are far away from each other, while the standard deviation shows how the numbers are far away from the mean. Both of them gives you an understanding of whether the numbers are similar or no, there are too many different numbers available. Makes sense, Shoaib? So which do you think has the smallest standard deviation in the three scenarios above? where do you think the numbers are not so far away from each other?
Because the variance?
No, it's not what I mean. I mean, he's asking me about the standard deviation. He wants me to compare the standard deviation of A اللي هي أول part فوق وبعدين B and then C. So I'm thinking which could have the smallest standard deviation, which means they do not deviate from each other a lot. The numbers do not deviate from each other. Like me, it means that the numbers are very similar to each other. When you look at A, the numbers are very similar. They're either 4, 5, or 6. While when you look at B, they're 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 8. When you look at C, it's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10. So which of them has more variability and which of them has more deviation?
A?
A has the least deviation.
Oh, so the most is C.
Yes, so the most means the deviation is high, it means they're far away from each other. Deviation is low, they're very close to each other. So that means that A must be the smallest. Then A must be the smallest, then B is bigger, and then C is the biggest. So when you compare them, it's A must be the correct answer. Makes sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. These are your last, okay? In this one, one is asking for the median and the other one is asking for the range, and I want you to find as well the mean. So when you look at this, I want from this table 3 things: mean, mode, actually 4 things: median and range. Okay? Calculate them and I'm here. Yeah. I'm just going to mute عشان الدوشة اللي عندي.
Okay. This is the frequency here 8.
Of which one? Yeah. Of which one?
Of the chart?
No, the frequency is of each term. Like each score has its own frequency.
I add them.
So you want to know? You mean how many يعني are there? How many scores are there?
Yeah, because like for the mean, I would find the scores and then divide it by the amount.
So you add all frequencies, add all numbers of students.
Yeah, so like 4 and 4 and then 8 and then okay. Mister, I have another question.
Of course, يا حبيبتي.
Is the median 70?
Yes.
Okay, Mister, I'm done.
Okay, إيه يا حبيبتي قولي لي.
So the mean is 70.6. The mode is 70, the median is 70, and the range is 40.
Range is 40, right? The mean بس هو اللي فيه حاجة. Tell me how did you do it?
So I did 50 times 4 plus 60 times 4 plus 70 times 8 plus 80 times 4.5 plus 90.
So sum طلع كام؟
Mister, I did it على طول over 25 بس I'll check now.
هم 25. Are you sure هم 25?
Yeah, because 4, 8, 16, 20, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, Mister, 25.
Okay. So yes, it's true. Not okay. Okay. So then the median is 25 divided by 2, which is 12.5. So the 12, so the 13th هو ده المedian, and then when you check this is 4, 4, and this is 8. So a total of 16. So the 13th must be the 70 itself. صح؟ أكتر رقم اتكرر is the 70. So that's why this is it. The range is perfect. You did everything right. صح؟ Perfect. قولي لي عندك questions على إيه؟
Nothing like about what we took so far now. I don't have any questions. I'll just go over the recording.
Okay.
And like write what she said about each one.
طيب I'll give you the rest of the PDF as a homework as well. So I'll add this as the notes, and then the questions in the you just practice them. The applications on almost the same things. Try them out. This should show you whether you do understand them, and it should show you as well the other types of like questions about it. Okay.
Yeah. Lesson could we complete with homework for the other lesson?
Because I know the questions are important. بس أنا النهارده كنت عايز بس أبقى خلصنا كمان حاجتين كبار زي دول يعني.
Yeah, it's good.
والابسولوت كمان done, ف that's a good thing. وحلينا عليهم برضو شوية, which is a good thing قوي. Okay, anyway. Stop.